Hello and welcome to Basic Bits and Pieces Biology Lesson 2. In today's lesson we're going to talk a little bit about something that is essential to all scientists, and that's note-taking. We're also going to talk a little bit about taxonomy. Let's go ahead and get started. So what makes a scientist? This is my definition. It is not a definition you'll find in the dictionary. So a scientist takes notes, because they seek knowledge, love observation, and like to practice experimentation. But in order to do that in a logical manner, they have to be able to refer back to their previous understanding. A scientist can be an amateur or a professional. The word amateur comes from the Latin word amare, which means the lover of something. And so someone who follows scientific thought for the love of it is an amateur. Professionals are scientists who've studied a field in depth, and they contribute to it professionally either through research, development, experimentation, or further education. So scientists observe, quantify, and experiment. What is an observation? An observation is to take note of something. It's more than just seeing it. We see things all the time, but to observe it, we look at it more deeply. We look at the details, the characteristics, the behaviors of something. And then we may naturally be curious enough to start quantifying it. We may say, oh, this cat is larger than that cat. We may want to measure how long the cat is, or measure how heavy the cat is. So quantification is to identify the measurements or patterns of something. So we may say that this flower is a flower that thrives in shaded areas, and so we've seen a pattern that this particular flower thrives in shade. And so from observation and quantification we can draw a conclusion, and this is a hypothesis. Hypotheses are things that can be tested. They're conclusions that are based on observation or quantification, but they might not always be true, so we need to test them to see if they're always true. And that's where experimentation comes in. Alright, so as young scientists, a good place to start is a nature journal. A nature journal is a place that you can write down your quantifications and observations of the living world, and you can do this for anything in the physical world. You'll want to make sure that you have the time, the date, and the location written down so that when you refer back to your notes you can decide, was this observation based on the time? Was it based on the time of year? Was it based on the location or the environment? You'll also want to have the name of the specimen observed and any observation you have of it. So that's the color, the size, the quantification, such as the size, the weight, the length, and then also you'll want to have behaviors written down, contributing factors in the environment, things that are interesting to you. You'll definitely want to have the name written down. Here you have the taxonic name. So it starts with Eukarya and which is the domain. It goes all the way down to F. catus, which is the species. And then I have a crude drawing of a cat here. I'm not a very good artist, and I didn't really take time to draw this cat. But you would want to put a drawing or a picture of whatever you're observing inside the nature journal, and this will give you an opportunity to practice drawing things. You may want to draw a cell if you're looking at it at an onion cell, for example. You may want to draw a plant if you're observing a plant. And so to give you some opportunities to really perfect skills that are adjacent to scientific skills. And then if you are observing a tree, you may actually take a leaf and put it and paste it in there once it's dried. And then you'll want to put any thoughts related. So if it reminds you of a quote, you can put the quote in there. If it reminds you of a song, you can put the lyrics of the song in there. If it makes you think, I wonder if this is always true, you can write ideas for an experiment inside your scientific journal. This is your journal. Just make sure that you have these basic elements and you can add or take away as you need. All right. So taxonomy is the naming of living things. Last time we talked a little bit about phylogeny, which is how living things are related. So how they are related in the sense of evolution, how species are in the same family. And this time we're talking more specific about the name of things. So taxonomy is the study of naming living things, and each of these levels, the domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, each of these are called taxa. And here we have the taxonomy of the monarch butterfly. So you'll notice that monarch is not written here at all, and neither is butterfly. And yet, a scientist could look at this and know that I'm referring to the monarch butterfly. Alright, so now we have observation. What can you observe? You can observe pretty much anything inside the living world, or the physical world. So you can observe living things such as biota, which is flora and fauna. Flora is plants, fauna is animals. You can observe physical things such as stars and how the seasons and the way that the world turns makes the star positions change. Water, freezing, boiling, pH. There's all sorts of things you can learn about water. Algae level, if there's any protists inside that water. It's very interesting to observe water. Soil, same thing. Very interesting to observe soil. You can see color, change, composition, small molecular organisms, pH. Very interesting to observe soil. So if you're interested in physical science, you could even do rocks. You could do the location where you found different rocks. If you're interested in dinosaurs, you could see about if you've found any fossils. Observations can be anything in the physical world. And then from your observations, you might want to quantify. So quantification is measured in kilograms, meters, and seconds. And the tools depend on what's being measured. And then experimentation will come from those two things, as we spoke of earlier. So the example of a flower, whether it does best in sun, partial sun, or shade. Does this plant do better in sun, partial sun, or shade? The hypothesis could be that this plant does best in partial sun or partial shade. And so an experiment would be to determine if this is true. And so you would take three different plants three plants that are of the same species but are in different pots and put them in full sun, partial sun, and shade. You'd want to make sure that you water them the same. You'd want to make sure that you give them the same plant food and give them the same care. But then you'd measure to see which plant does the best, which one thrives. Is it the one in the partial shade, like your hypothesis says, or is it one of the other plants that does best? Alright, well that is all we have for today. So thank you for having this lesson with me, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.